you've probably heard of someone who's got the grand champion or like the reserve grand champion hog or steer. And I'm going to talk about a little bit how they train those judges that pick out which one will win. I have been judging for 4 years now on a high school level team. My first year, I placed 113th out of 113, and this year, I placed 7th. I actually tied for 5th. But livestock judging is kind of weird, like when they're training for it. When you walk up and you see these people, it's all silent. We can't talk for 8 hours. So we're all just standing around, like, just looking at animals, and people are probably most of the time like, what are they doing? And like, you walk into a hallway, and where we practice reasons. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And like in the hallway, there's just a bunch of people just sitting in lines, not talking still. And if they are talking, they're talking to the wall. But when you evaluate the class, you actually, at a contest, there are anywhere from 6 to 12 classes of animals, each containing 4 animals that you have to judge. These usually include market and breeding classes of cattle, sheep, and hogs, as well as usually an additional class of breeding goats or market goats. It depends on what contest you're at. And there's also like additional classes if it's a bigger contest. Cattle is one of my favorite ones to judge. Most people, when they see like a field of cattle, they're just like, oh look, there's cows, but it's really, cattle is the breed term because cow refers to a female that has calf, and we don't judge cows, we just judge heifers and steers and bulls. And when you're like judging for, you judge market and breeding. When you're judging for market, you're seeing which cow has like, or which steer has the most product and has like the biggest bone and is most correct in its structure, because you don't want a steer that can't move and can't get to the feed, because you probably won't bring as much money when you take him to market. And when you're doing breeding, you want them to have a big barrel shape to their ribs, and you want them to be deep so that they're easier to carry the calf inside. And you want them to be balanced, like you don't want them to look like they're just pieced together. You want them to like come all together and be pretty smooth appearing. And at contests, there are 2 main categories of sheep. There's breeding ewes and market lambs. The market lambs can be either ewes or wethers. It just depends on what they got for the contest. And the breeding ewes are based on their maternal abilities, and the market lambs, like you actually have to feel the lambs when you're judging them to see which one has the most product. Like you have to feel down their backs, and you have to feel over their ribs to see which one's the tightest. And you have to feel their leg to see which one has the thickest and fullest leg. And usually you use that in your reasons because you get a higher score. Like all scores are out of 50 for your judging. Like if you switch, they always make cuts, and if you switch your pair, like you get cut. And usually there's at least one class that you bomb. I got a 25 out of 50 this weekend on one of my classes, and I dropped 48 points out of 500, but last weekend I didn't drop as many. So the closer you get to 50, the better you do. And the best cuts of meat on the sheet are here in the loin and the leg. So you want one that has the thickest loin and the thickest leg. And you also want them to be up-headed, and you want their structure to be correct here too. Like you don't want them to be fat up here. If they're fat, it like hangs down between their front legs. And like back here, you want them to be big boned. Like you don't want them to just be a U. You want them to actually be a V between their back legs. And when judging hogs, the 2 main groups are breeding gilts and market hogs. Gilts are judged on the maternal abilities that they portray, and market hogs are judged on their ability to turn profit to market. When you judge hogs, they're not usually big in their ribs like a cattle or sheep are. You have to see which one's the deepest and which one's the softest in their middle. They have to be big bone, and you don't want them to be hanging, like have fat pretty clean under here, because if they're not, they're really fat, and that's not very good. Reasons are a short 2-minute or less speech on why you placed the class the way you did. There's usually only 3 sets of reasons. Sometimes there's 4 or 6 if you go to like Purdue or a college contest. But at normal contests, there's only 3 sets. And you take your notes for these reasons in books like these. These are my notes since 8th grade for all my classes. And when you're giving reasons, your goal is to persuade the reasons judge that you place the class the right way. And sometimes that's hard because the people are kind of scary when you're talking to them. And like they make faces if they're like college judges. But you want to have really good flow when you're giving your reasons, and you want to use really good terms that other people don't use so that you stand out. I'll give you a sample set of reasons. This is actually my highest scoring set this year so far. So this is like what those kids are preparing for when they're talking to themselves and sitting in those chairs. 4, 3, 1, 2 is my alignment of today's class of shorthorn heifers. As I observed this class, I found that 4 easily ran her way to the top of the class ran herself to the top as being the class winner. Here we have a heifer that's correctly designed and sure-footed and leads out with the longest reach up front and is the most correct in her step from behind. She pulls together the strongest top line when set in motion and is the big-bodied, soft-centered heifer. Big-bodied, soft-centered heifer that comes with an easy maintaining look through her center body. Now, in my middle pair, I placed 3 over 1, as I found that 3 was most closely followed today's class winner. Here we've got a soft-centered heifer that's got an easier fleshing look through her center body. She's wide down her top and is big boned and walks easier off of both ends. While I admit that 1 is a bigger bodied heifer today, she falls into my 3rd place spot as she was rougher designed and was more steery about her appearance. Now, in my bottom pair, I placed 1 over 2 as I found that 1 was a more logical 3rd place. Here we've got a bigger bodied, fuller rib heifer that's wider down her top and easier moving. I believe that she pulls together a more total package of internal carrying capacity and structural correctness. And today I fault 2 and take her to the bottom of my class as she was the lowest performing, smallest framed heifer of the class. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.